Well, it's been very, very hot across the nation, and of course, you would have seen that many people are facing what looks like an energy crisis. Public power supply is terrible, and of course, the heat has been so much. Well, Nigeria is one of the 9 critical countries facing a significant cooling access gap with 114.9 million people, that's 53% of the total population, at high risk due to very, very high temperatures. Now, this represents a significant share of the population living in poverty and lacking access to sufficient and reliable electricity. The federal government's Scaling Up Energy Efficient and Climate-Friendly Cooling in Nigeria project is an initiative that aims to revolutionize Nigeria's cooling landscape by accelerating the adoption of energy-efficient practices and fostering a more environmentally conscious approach to cooling solutions to reduce the impact of climate change on buildings. Well, the aim is to minimize energy wastage and eliminate refrigerants with high global warming potential, which depletes the ozone layer. Unfortunately, many air conditioners used in Nigeria fall below internationally acceptable energy performance standards, and experts say it is important to seek a cost-effective means of providing energy security, increasing economic productivity, and mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. Well, let's speak with the national coordinator for the project, Nigeria's Sustainable Cooling Project, Etiosa Uyigue. He has over 15 years of experience working in the field of sustainable energy and climate change. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, it's been terribly hot all across Nigeria, and people are wondering what steps they should be taking to actually cool their homes and all of that. And here you are, a formal organization that has been set up by both the Nigerian government and the UN to help advise the government on cooling buildings and all of that. So talk to us more about this.
Yes, thank you so much. What we are trying to do is a campaign. We are trying to encourage people to use cooling appliances. When I make cooling now, I'm talking about, we're talking about air conditioners. There was a study that was done sometime in 2012 by the Energy Commission of Nigeria. We found out that in that study, cooling appliances consume about 40% of household electricity. It was done in the residential areas. Then the study that was done in 2015 in public buildings, air conditioners only consume over 60% of the electricity.
Oh, interesting.
So cooling is quite significant. And you know that in terms of the major cause of climate change is the emission of certain gases, what we call the greenhouse gases, into the atmosphere. And one of these gases, the chief of them, or the most abundant of them, I would say that, use that word, is carbon dioxide, or CO2. And energy generation contribute close to 60% of greenhouse gas emission globally. So what we are trying to do is, we are, in the climate change discourse, we have 2 approaches, okay? We talk about mitigation. Mitigation is trying to stop what is causing the climate change, which of course is the gases, how to reduce the emission of those gases. Of course, we have adaptation. Yes, adaptation says that, yes, these changes are already there. How do you help the people? How do they cope with the changes? So, but what we are doing is more on mitigation, trying to stop what is actually the causes of this climate change. So what we are trying to say is, we're encouraging people to use more efficient appliances. When you do that, if we do that at a larger scale, you do that as an individual, and millions of people do that, we could be saving up to several megawatts.
That's using like energy efficient bulbs?
Yes, energy efficient bulbs, yes. So if we do that at larger scale, at the national level, we're talking about megawatts of electricity. In other words, if you save megawatts of electricity, the nation doesn't need to spend a lot of resources building several megawatts. So we are using energy. For example, I'll give you a simple example. You know this light, this incandescent bulb, some go for 60 watts, some go for 100 watts.
Yeah, the old yellow bulbs.
Yeah, this yellow bulb. It's very hot. 95% of the energy input goes into heat. Only 5% is converted to light that you use. So we're encouraging people, why don't you move away from there, use the energy efficient ones, you will still have the same luminous flow, luminosity. So you are trying to use less power to get a service or even better services. So if you do that at large scale, and you do that, let's say millions or 2 million people do that, and you aggregate the power, the peak, you are talking about several megawatts of electricity being reduced. And that can translate to building avoiding the building of several power stations. So this is why this is very critical, very, very critical. Yes, while we are talking about generation, yes, let's also talk about efficient. Let's use this efficiently. If we use it efficiently, more people will have access to electricity.
All right. So the cooling of buildings is super important during this period now.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were in the old days, people just stay in compound systems, and when it's so hot like this, everybody goes to under trees and stay. I mean, but we live in cities over time now, and then there are sustainable practices that your organization is also advocating. Talk to us about some of those sustainable practices, because I've heard that sometimes you also encourage people who build to look at specific designs that will help cool buildings rather than just building structures that could actually bring in more heat.
There are a lot of things that you can do. Passive cooling. There's what we call passive cooling in buildings, where you have to. There's a way you can build the design of your house. You can design your house in a way that you don't need to use artificial cooling. These are passive cooling. For example, you can use some kind of materials that have resistance to heat flow. For a good example is the POP is a good example. You have resistance to heat flow. So these are some of the things you can put in place. Then again, the way you also you can landscape. You can do a lot of landscape. You can plant a lot of trees around your house, to shield away the rays of the sun, so that you have passive cooling. So you don't need to spend much electricity cooling your house. So these are some of the ways, some of those ways we can do what we can do at this time.
One of them actually read is that you should have vegetation on external walls, green walls, which can reduce indoor temperatures by an average of 2.3 degrees Celsius and all of that. And then, of course, shading devices like verandas and all of that. Now, talk to us how much of support, or talk to us about the support that you've been receiving from the government as you try to enlighten people. I mean, this may look very little, but when it comes to codes, maybe building design codes and all of that, national codes for strengthening our capacity to be able to bring these cooling systems into effect, it could actually help. So what kind of support have you been getting from the Nigerian government?
The government has been very supportive. In 2022, the government developed what we call the National Cooling Action Plan. It's a policy document that provides strategies, the strategies, the roadmap on how to reduce emission from cooling. Now, emission in the sense that there are two ways we look at the emission reduction: the direct emission and the indirect emission. Now, when we talk about the direct emission, we look at the refrigerants. Some of the refrigerants we have in our cooling systems, they are not ozone friendly. We call them ODS, ozone depleting substances.
That's when you say refrigerants, you're talking about freezers, fridges, and then maybe ACs and all of that.
Yeah, what I mean refrigerants now, they use the cooling appliances use gases for the cooling. Some of those gases, some of them are HFCs, hydrofluorocarbon. So many of them, some of them are some of them, or I could say the one that were initially being used, they are ozone depleting. Some of them also have global warming potential. It's not that they can also cause climate change. So now the global campaign is that they are moving away from those refrigerants that are not very environmentally friendly.
Yeah, those gases. Actually.
Those gases, the gases now. So they are moving to more environmentally friendly refrigerant. That's for the direct emission. Then the indirect emission is what I've been talking about on energy efficiency, because for every electricity you get, there is a commensurate burning of either gas or diesel somewhere. So the more we reduce our energy dependency, or the energy we spend, maybe we use efficiency, they were also reducing indirectly those gases, like gases that are being used to generate this electricity. So that's what the indirect emission. So the government has been very supportive. They came up with that document, and part of what we are doing in this project, we are actually implementing one of the recommendations in that document.
All right, the Nigerian government is already implementing
yes,
it.
Yes, okay. Yes, that's what this project is about.
What ministry, actually?
Yeah, the Energy Commission of Nigeria.
Okay, through the Energy Commission of Nigeria. Well, just before I let you go, talk to us about how citizens can actually embrace better practices of, ensuring that we have a sustainable environment that's good for everyone. I mean, some of these innovations you're talking about, I mean, it may look as if it's only the government can implement them. What are the specific things that we can do as individuals or as groups of people to actually make sure we have a much more cooler climate than what we do have at the moment?
Yes. First of all, climate change is caused by human activities, what we call anthropogenic activities. So what we advise people and what citizens can do, anytime you are buying an appliance, go for the efficient ones, the energy efficient appliances. Then you can also move to beyond being beyond efficiency, buying efficient equipment. You can also use, because like I said before, in mitigation of climate change, we also have two approaches: use of renewable energy systems, like we're familiar with solar systems and the rest of them. Then, of course, the second one is the energy efficiency system. So we also encourage people, because these are some of the ways you can reduce the emission of these gases. And it's the emission of these gases that is actually causing the global warming, causing the atmosphere to warm, the temperature to the global temperature to increase. So these are some of the practices. So we encourage people use more efficient. Before you buy any appliances, make sure you ensure that it is efficient. Again, it's not only for the benefit of the environment. It also has some economic benefit for the person. You spend less money paying your bill, you know.
All right. Yeah. We must thank you so much. Okay. I think it's a fine place to actually leave it at the moment, because it's not really been easy for citizens actually. Everywhere you go to now, people are looking for different means to actually shield themselves from sunlight. And I mean, the heat has been terribly much. But of course, we just hope that people embrace sustainable practices like you've talked about, and we hope that the government will continue to enlighten people. But we must thank you so much, Etiosa Uyigue, who is the coordinator of this climate-friendly cooling system that the government is actually bringing into place. We must thank you so much for helping us to understand these issues.